Taxes was taxing. Now taxes is relaxing when you file for free.
I can file for free? TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free. I can file for free.
Now this is taxes. File for free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your maximum refund. No schedules except for earned income tax credit, child tax credit, and student loan interest. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free.
Listen, doesn't matter what book you read, there are a lot of good ones out there. The idea is to put those techniques into practice. Start creating daily habits that are different from what you're doing.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory, walk.
Warning, this is a public service announcement. The Walk in Victory podcast is where we have conversations purposed to evolve lives. You may not want to evolve. Then tune into another bleeping podcast. Everyone else, enjoy the show. And here's our host.
Good afternoon, good day, good evening. I don't know what time you're listening or where you're listening from. It's your boy, your host, NaRon Tillman, and you are with me for another episode of Walk in Victory. Speaking of victory walks, you will not be victorious in anything in life unless you have systems and plans for production in place. So, as a mindfulness coach who studies the way that people process things, we look up the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind works on autopilot. We do have repetitions and things that we do that's unique to us that we don't even realize that we're doing it. We can do it. We say it. Man, I could do that without even thinking, right? And that's what happens because we programmed the mind to make these things true or echoing or to make these things go without us thinking about it. However, and here, this is the big however, when we start to try to train others in what we do, we don't sweat the small stuff, meaning the little nuances to our day that we go about. So we hire somebody and say, hey, you want to take this job. And then we try to train them, but we can't really train them. It's like a great basketball player trying to show somebody else how to be a basketball player. The other person don't get it and they get frustrated. Like, I can't train them because some things are innate within us. So when we talk about productivity, one of the things that we need to do is to track and monitor what it is that we do. Because we do so many things subconsciously without even recognizing that we do it, that in our training, we're not given the proper information. So when the employee come back and ask you a question like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, you're supposed to do this. Oh yeah. So how do we forget those? As managers, inventors, investors, entrepreneurs, how do we get past that? Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you. We have to have a system by which we track, monitor, and record what it is that we do. I would say, and I'm building the program around it, so I won't talk in front of you. I would say track, monitor, and record for 3 to 4 days because Monday may not look like Wednesday. Depending on your business, there's things that pop up that you didn't even imagine or realize that you did. So we have to track, monitor, and record our days. Don't cheat it. Write everything down. This will give you a benchmark for when you start to train and remove yourself. If you're going to move from business owner to entrepreneur, you have to remove yourself from things. If you're still in the mindset, if I'm not there and it's not going to get done, then you're not ready to move to that next level. But we're going to talk about processes and moving to the next level and that kind of thinking with our guest today. We have conversations that help you evolve. Mark, how are you doing, sir?
I am terrific today, NaRon. Good to be here.
I'm happy to have you. First, can you tell our audience about yourself, what it is that you do, and if you have any expounding correction to anything that I said, I need you to be free. This is an open platform. This is how we conversate.
Well, NaRon made some great points about tracking and monitoring what you do. That's kind of the business I've been in for the last 35 years. So before that, I was a marketing guy with Procter & Gamble and a couple of other companies. But way back, I invented a small electronic device. For those who are watching, it's called a timecorder, and it looks like this. This is the current version. And so, yeah, I invented that. It's a small electronic device. It's really a series of stopwatches, and only one of them can be on at a time. So if you think of a chess clock, there's two people playing chess, right? And their clocks go down.
Okay.
Well, imagine that times 20 for different activities. And imagine instead of the clocks running down, that they're adding up your time. That's working like a stopwatch to add your time. And so when you said write everything down, this is kind of an easier way to do that. So I program those devices with different activities for managers. So they're managing people, they're filling out paperwork, they're attending meetings and so on. And I've actually measured 3,000 different business activities. So that's a lot. So anyway, a typical person would measure 20 or 30 or so. And the way it works is every time you begin a new activity, you just press one button. It's a little less complicated to use than a doorbell. Simple to use, gives you instant feedback. People love using them. All the results are anonymous. I never use employee names. So my business, I do some training as well and facilitation, but my business is about gathering data to help people understand where does all the time go.
Wow, what's funny because I have a time management piece. I hear it echo, but I have a time management piece that I train people on, and one is to track your time, but then to take those numbers. So like you said, just press a button, and I'm going to add that into the piece if you don't mind me taking that from you. But you press a button, and it gives you a number. So let's say phone calls. We don't realize how much time we spend on the phone throughout the course of the day. But what if we had a system where we did all of our phone calls in clusters and we made many days out of the day? This is the times that I speak on the phone. This is the time that I respond to emails. This is the time that, and create like an assembly line with our actions. We can get more done. Am I right? Am I on the right path? Or am I off?
Yes, we can talk about the data in a couple of minutes for sure. You're talking about how, what do you do with that data? You mentioned the basketball player, and, I can't teach someone else to throw baskets or whatever, but he can get someone to manage the equipment, get someone to arrange the travel, there's scorekeepers and so on. So there's people doing different tasks to allow that basketball player to be the best that they can be. So you suggested one thing, batching jobs together. So there's a bunch of different ways to take the data and become more productive. My definition of productivity is that you're spending the most amount of time on your highest priority activities and as little amount of time on your low priority activities. Well, that makes sense. Now we'll get to the data, but you talked about solutions. So do you delegate some of those administrative tasks? Do you batch jobs together? Do you automate some things? Do you use technology to help you? Are you clear on what your major priority tasks ought to be so that you're focusing your time on the important stuff? So indeed, through your work and mine and others, there are a lot of different techniques that you can put in place once you know where you are. And that's my positioning, is that knowing where you are is sort of the starting point for where you want to be.
How did you get into this? Like, you came from a marketing standpoint. what were your observations to make you say, you know what? Marketing is not really the problem. The problem is that we're allocating money, and businesses still do it right now. We have we
When you
have
talk to a lot of coaches and professionals and you look at them on LinkedIn, they say, I was not in a very good place and, I wasn't organized and this and that. I decided to get better. Well, I guess that was true for me. I was 11 and I was a paper boy. And I figured I've got to find a way to deliver my papers as efficiently as possible so that I could spend more time with my friends or on schoolwork or with my family or skiing or whatever. So, I- you can learn a lot as a paper boy. First, for instance, the newspapers, and maybe people don't know much about what being a paper boy is all about, but the newspapers would get delivered to a depot, and from there we'd take them and deliver them to our customers. On the weekends, there was not just the newspaper, but there was a magazine insert. They were published
Yeah,
differently.
yes.
And you had to take the magazine insert and put it inside the paper and deliver both of them together. So there we were sitting at the depot, me and a few other guys, and I'd watch these guys awkwardly putting one into the other. And I thought, this is a time and motion study. How can I most effectively and quickly get those magazines into the papers? How do I have to position everything to do that as fast as possible? So that was number one. Number two, we think about technology. Well, me, the little boy, as paper boy, I use technology. I bought a wagon. It's much easier pulling the newspapers along in a wagon than hauling them on your back, which is kind of heavy and awkward. Then I looked at operations research, you might call it. Um, if I have to deliver to two sides of a street, do I take two newspapers over to that side and then come back to the wagon, or do I take four over? So calculating the most efficient sort of number of steps was important. Here's another one. You can actually fold the papers up. You've seen kids throwing them on
Mhm.
bicycle. You can fold the paper up. Well, how much time does it take to fold the paper versus walking up and throwing it? I could actually throw it up the steps without folding it. But just folding makes sense. So you've got an investment in prep time to allow your distribution time to be reduced. Here's another one. We used to have to go and collect from customers every single week. I'd go and knock on their door Tuesday night and say, hello, I'm collecting for the newspaper. Here's what you owe me. It wasn't very much at the time. And so that took a while to do your collections. And eventually I thought, well, that's a lot of time. What if I divide the route in half? I'll go to this half of the route on the first week and the third week, and the other half of the week on the second and fourth week. So I'm collecting for 2 weeks in a row, which people were fine with. And so I was able to batch those jobs and become more efficient that way and spend less time on collections. Instead of going to 50 people, 100 people in a week, I went to 50 every 2 weeks. So those were some of the ideas that I got about becoming more efficient as a paperboy. I'll continue the story. As an adult, I was in a meeting, and we've all gone to poorly run meetings, and we're all standing around waiting for people to show up, as we all do. Oh gosh, what time is it? We should be started. And I thought, this is frustrating because in the company at the time, there was a real culture of sloppy meetings starting. And I looked at somebody, I said, you add up your salary and his and hers and mine, and the time we spent here, it's a lot of time. We should measure that, or actually you can measure different things, and then boom, the sort of aha moment hit me that you could have a device to measure all these things. So I created that in my mind, as we all do. We're all inventors. The difference is I went and had an electronic engineer develop some prototypes and then launched it, and one thing led to another. So I created a physical device with a keyboard and circuit board and so on. And by the way, I'm an inventor, but I had other people do the technical sides. So somebody else did the programming, someone else did the sourcing and graphic design and so on. So I used my delegation abilities to find other experts in areas that I wasn't good at.
So you handled a lot in that, and you unpacked a lot because in order to really be an entrepreneur, moving from one mindset, now starting creating, developing, um, inventing, because you became all of that at one shot. An inventor, an entrepreneur, a developer. How did you, what gave you the wherewithal to take on those hats and to build to where you are today? Now we're about to fast forward.
Well, maybe it's sheer stubbornness. I'll tell you, as an entrepreneur, you have to pivot. And,
Yes.
certainly at the time, there was, it's a while back, right? 1989, I invented the original version of the device. It's a couple of versions ago, so it's quite old. And the newer version works really well. So at the time, there weren't a whole bunch of apps. Well, there were no smartphones and hardly any
Right.
laptops. But there was this need for lawyers and accountants to track their time. We knew about billable time. And I thought, okay, notwithstanding my interest in productivity, I thought I could sell these devices to lawyers and accountants to use them to bill their time. So what I'd like to do is go through the entire list of all the lawyers and accountants who bought one of the timecorder devices.
Yeah.
Okay, we finished with that little exercise. I just gave you the list.
That many sales. So, all right.
The timecorder,
That
well,
entrepreneurial, entrepreneur X. All right, let's go.
Yeah. it turned out to be the world's most popular product that everybody thought somebody else should buy. So I did go to the lawyers, and they said, because of our nature of our business, you're actually going to be better with accounting people. So I went to accountants. We're on national TV, and there's accountants who tried it. It's like a reality TV show, one of the early ones here in Canada. And but anyway, that worked. But they not quite right for us. Your market is going to be, said the accountants, your market is going to be independent consultants. So I found a couple of independent consultants, and they said, have you talked to the lawyers? It was just a circle of people referring me to other people. So I did sell a few to people wanting to do productivity studies and nobody billing their time. So I had to pivot. And I was on this national TV show, and they recorded me, and I was driving around town and going to sales calls. At the very end, I said, well, I'm actually interested in doing time studies. And so there was some PR from this, and people called me up, and one of them was a Salesforce guy, and I said, perfect. So I kind of had to make up this brand new business of doing these time studies. And the older device was sort of big and clunky, and I went into their office. We'd already trained people, they were already tracking their time, and I went to retrieve the devices. And I thought, well, I'll just use their computer to upload some of the information to look and see what it looked like. And all these guys were gathered around looking at the computer with me. And I thought, we're onto something here. They are curious to see how they spend their time. They're curious to improve. And of course, their data was very accurate, and they tracked a whole bunch of activities. So I knew I was onto something. The challenge over the years, and all entrepreneurs face this, is the kind of hurdles you face. The one that I face is people are going, our employees aren't going to like that. Well, indeed, employees during COVID who were monitored, they didn't like what was going on with all these monitoring systems. Flip that around upside down. Even if you do an employee survey, people don't like that. When I do my studies, the participation rate is not 30 or 40%, it's 94%. If we give out 100 devices, 94 of them will come back with detailed, accurate data. The other 6 were someone was on maternity leave, or we got the wrong person or something. But 94, it's unheard of in terms of employee. We're asking people to carry these things around for 2 weeks to track their time on everything they do. We're not watching them, and they do it, and they have fun with it. They love it. They get feedback. So it's being very successful that way, because We engage with the employees. We tell them why we're doing this. We make it easy, and the results are anonymous.
So speaking of pivoting, right? Now that we are in the AI age, you, you don't need a big clunky device to do this. How are you using the technology that we have at our hands to help to do what it is that you've already been doing? Has AI helped? Has the new advancement in technology helped what you do, or do you find it as a nuisance or deterrent?
Well, let me give a short answer and then a longer answer. I have a huge database of data, and I've got some excellent tools for analyzing that data. There's a possibility that throwing a little bit of AI into that would make that even easier, or provide some insights that I haven't already been able to glean. But I've got some really terrific analytical tools. Let's talk about AI in general. Look, I started doing these time studies before voicemail existed, before laptops were common, before the internet, before smartphones. So I've seen all of these different technologies come along. I'll give you an example. When I was at the Procter and Gamble, we used to do promotion plans, and we got computers and we got Excel spreadsheets. And wow, wasn't this great? I used to calculate spreadsheets by hand. We had a big printed sheets, and you had to add up the rows and columns to
Yeah.
make sure they added up.
F1,
So guess
F4.
what? So what? We got Excel, and wasn't that great? But you know what happened? Instead of doing one promotion plan, we were asked to do 3 or 4 different versions, the 5% version, the 10% version, and so on, 5% growth. So I don't know if our promotion plans were any better, but they certainly had prettier looking fonts. Let's talk about technology in general. Here's my thing I say. In 1990, or was it 91 or 92, Microsoft or one of those companies put out a video, and they said, look at all this great technology that you will soon have. And they showed a guy driving around in a car, and he's pushing buttons, and people were, the software was booking appointments for him and so on. Well, that world has arrived. All of the stuff that was predicted way back has now arrived. And you know what? People are no more productive than they were when I started these stuff back in 1990. Let me give you an example. Sometimes we track time spent on miscellaneous email. That's unnecessary email.
Yeah.
And the average is, get this, 3.4 hours per week. Where's the productivity increase there? Now, listen, all these tools, spreadsheets and smartphones and, AI and all these are great tools if used well, but
Without a
they
doubt.
also bring unexpected spin-offs and time wasters along with them. And so what happens is that people's time spent on non-value added administrative tasks way back was about 25%. And today it is still 25%. So we're not that much more productive than we were when I started.
I was just formulating in my mind, being busy doesn't mean that you're being productive.
Correct. So you want to be busy on the right things.
Cool.
And so, you got to start with, what are my goals? And then what are my activities that are consistent with those goals, and spending your time on the highest priority tasks. I'll tell you what that is.
Yeah, that's what that.
Give me a couple of minutes on this. So if you look at time management books, they all tell you spend your time on what matters most or important tasks and so on. And then Covey and others came along with the so-called Eisenhower matrix, the urgent important matrix. So you shouldn't be doing things that are urgent. You should work on important things. It's a little grid of 2 by 2, attributed to Eisenhower, but actually he attributed it to a college university leader. But anyway, we're supposed to spend our time on things that are non-urgent and important, the quadrant 2. But even Covey, Stephen Covey, and others don't define what those are. Nobody ever has. So I thought, I'm going to do that. What are these important tasks? When I start the time studies, we ask people, what are the most important tasks that you need to do, or the most important activities you need to do in your job? And this is to make sure that people are aligned with where the time is going. So you say a sales rep, they should be selling. Well, yeah, but some of them say they should be doing customer
Customer
service.
service, yeah.
Some of them say they should be processing orders. So I looked at a number of different types of employees, and I looked at what their top item was. For managers, it's leading and managing people. For customer service reps, it's providing customer service. Okay, that's that quadrant 2. That's the important and non-urgent activities. So
Mm.
now let's look at those same people and see where their time is being spent.
Can
It turns,
can
yeah,
I stop? Because I want to unpack that
yeah,
because you said, and it seems kind of oxymoronic that in the second quadrant you have important and not important tasks clustered in together.
non-urgent,
Non-urgent, yeah.
important, non-urgent.
Yeah, important, not urgent. I'm not my bad. And I'm glad you corrected me. But let's define important and non-urgent task.
That's my point. No one ever has. So, right, I looked at Covey's book again, and he makes a couple of vague things about
It's
relationship
very
building or
yeah.
but so I said, what are the most important tasks you need to do in your job? And a sales rep says selling. Okay, so that's his or her important task, selling. So I added up hundreds of people, thousands, and I looked at different jobs, and what did they tell me were their most important tasks? For salespeople, it's selling. For customer service reps, it's servicing customers and so on. So, okay, so
Yeah.
that's the map of what they say are their important tasks.
Yeah.
Now, how do they spend their time on those things?
Right
So
down.
then I went and I said, all right, well, how are you spending your time on those? Turns out across a broad range of knowledge worker jobs, this isn't retail people, well, a few, it's not warehouse workers, it's truck drivers, it's knowledge workers, people doing sales and service and managerial jobs and so on. It turns out that the average amount of time spent on those high priority tasks is 20% of the time. And that's it. Now, people talk about the 80-20 rule. That's a little different. And it sounds like it's just a coincidence that it's 20%. But here's something interesting from this recent research that I did. Turns out women are at 22% and men are only at 18%. So women are spending a greater percentage of their time on their highest priority tasks than men. There is a bit of a difference there. But overall, it's 20%. Really? Come on, what's all the rest? Well, the rest is planning time and travel and taking breaks and filling out paperwork and talking to your boss and getting trained and processing those customer orders and dealing with complaints and so on. So the majority the most important things are 20%. The rest builds up the rest of the time. Now, the top performers do get up to higher than that. They're up at 30 or 35%, but on average, it's around 20.
Yeah, that's so amazing that you've gotten this down to a science, to a number, and understand at a high level why businesses succeed and or fail. Give me 3 things that's a must at why business or entrepreneur would succeed.
Well, first, let's just talk about businesses overall. Think about productivity. I've come to realize is they don't care.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason I don't get hired not one of my companies on every street corner is because those knowledge workers are prepared to put in the extra time. They don't work 40 or 42 hours a week. They work 46 hours per week, and some are working 50 and 60 hours. Why? Because they want to get promoted. They want to do well in their job. They want to earn commissions, whatever. And so the company's getting that free labor from them. So there isn't always an incentive for the organization to say, you know what, we got to help you to become more productive. And that's a bit of a challenge. Having said that, there's a cost. You get the cost of burnout. You get the cost of turnover because people are tired of working those crazy long hours. You get the cost of, work not done effectively because it's being done work late at night and so on. So I don't want to say companies don't care, but they do care about other things than productivity. But nonetheless, to be productive, you talked about entrepreneurs and independent people. So I've done studies of independent consultants, people like you and me, and the idea was that they could use the time quarter. I don't charge them, and they could use it, and maybe they'll refer me to their clients to hire me. So I've done lots of studies of independent people, and I mentioned that knowledge workers, the average time that they spend is about 46 hours per week. The average for entrepreneurs, or at least consultants, is about 52 hours per week. And so you ask for tips.
Triple, yeah.
They need to spend time on marketing and selling. And everybody knows this. And typically it's around 12 hours per week. So you've got to spend your time on marketing and selling. The other thing is you got to realize that you're not going to be able to spend all your time in billable time. I've looked at the average for everybody who's an independent consultant. I've looked at the top performers. Even the top performers are only getting about 17 hours per week of billable time. That's probably going to be your limit, maybe 20 hours. And you're going to have weeks that are really big, but on average, you're not. So if you think about your 20 hours per week, maybe, or 17 maybe, is what you're going to get to, then you got to figure out your hourly rate or daily rate or whatever to be consistent with what you want to earn and with the amount of time that's available. Nobody is billing 40 hours a week. Now, there's some lawyers who do that, and they get 2,000 hours per year. How do they do that? Because they've got assistants working for them and clerks, because they're working crazy long hours, because some of their time they call billable that maybe is more administrative in nature. But for the average, those independent consultants, you're only going to get 700 or 800 hours per year in terms of billable time.
When you started to realize that what you were doing is going to be impactful in the world of business, what were some of the things that you had to learn about marketing it? Because we go back to that in the beginning, zero. So what were some of the lessons that you learned about getting the product in front of the right people?
Being an inventor helps back then. I did a number of PR pieces, and I always used to say that, oh, the media loves inventors. Well, they like serial killers too. But anyway, that's inventors, there's something about this sort of lone guy, struggling, figuring out in his basement how to invent this thing. So the idea of having invented the device was a bit of a hook that helped for getting some PR. And this is broadcast PR way back. The other thing, it was a few years later when everyone started to have a website, and I realized, how do you separate the men from the boys? And everybody had a website at the time. Well, they still do. And so how could you stand out when websites were ubiquitous and they were everywhere? And one time I was at my squash club and I saw an advertisement or a piece on TV about what turned out to be pay-per-click advertising. There was a company that predated Google. Google got into it a little bit after that. And I thought, that's for me. Everybody's doing this stuff for free. I'm prepared to pay a little bit to attract people to my website. So pay-per-click advertising has worked really well for me. People type time study, they're going to find me. I also do some facilitation work, strategic facilitation. You type that, you're going to find me. Not always, but usually I'm near the top. And so that was the way that I created leverage. Rather than me knocking on doors every day, I was able to use Google's reach and the idea of search for people to reach me. So what I would say is, whether you choose that or not, is separate yourself from others and make the investments you need to make. Don't have a free website, but pay to get that done properly. Pay for the services that allow you to stand out from others, rather than just doing everything for free. You can start a business, a consulting or coaching business for free, but invest those extra dollars as I did. And leverage through others, hire people to do your publicity for you, to do your copyright, all the things you're not good at in developing a circuit board, hire others to do the things you're not good at and focus in on the things that you're really, that are your specialty.
Why do people think that just because I'm good at A, that automatically make me good at B? I know you're not a psychiatrist, but you've been in business for a long time. You monitor people's steps. You monitor how people operate. Usually, if I'm a good hairstylist, I may not be a great entrepreneur to open up a salon. I may need to bring somebody to run that operation and not diminish what I'm really good at. But or else, if when we do this, and those of you are listening, we start to hate it because I'm not good at running a business. Now I hate the craft that I do because now it's a burden to me because it's not giving me what my expectations are. But I'm not willing to be honest that I might suck at running a business. But that doesn't diminish me as a beautification person or
Yeah, a different realm that we're getting into here. I think everyone should find their passion.
Yeah.
Maybe in your 20s, you can try different jobs, and you go to university, you try different subjects and so on. And that's okay to experiment, as I did. I was in marketing, and then I became an entrepreneur. Probably by around the time you're 30, you probably should have that figured out.
Yeah.
In terms of what my path is. You may still be learning. You may go back to school. You might be applying for a new job, but try and have it figured out. So how do you do that? I've got a son who's about to go into university, and so I'm encouraging him to watch movies, have conversations with people, read books, do it to kind of absorb the world and say, that thing there, that really intrigues me. Now, are you good at it or not? Well, some people have some natural skills, and others don't. So you get trained. I just took up piano playing, and yeah, it was almost 2 years ago, actually. My son broke his wrist in a ski accident, and he had some lessons. I'll take the lessons. So I just would like all your listeners to know I'm looking to join a band sometime in late November 2037.
You got a little dry wit with you. I like that.
Oh, but you got to find your passion. Music, interestingly, wasn't well, it was. I was a disc jockey, and I was really good at being a disc jockey. But I didn't ever think that I was good at music itself. But because I liked music, and this opportunity came up, and I wanted to do continuous learning, so now I'm learning about the other side of it, not just playing the songs, but as a DJ, but rather to learn how to play them on the piano. And
I have to ask you a question. Were you good at landing the song in, like, say, what they call that when it, like, you have to do a drop and the song is going into that where it's just the music intro coming in and you have to get all the words in, give your call letters, everything right before the voice of the musician starts? The pivot, they call it. Is that the pivot?
Yeah, there's something called beat mixing, and it kind of relates a little bit to what you're talking about. The idea is that so it's like just one long continuous song.
Yeah.
You mix the song so well. That was the opposite of what I did. I'm also a dancer, and I like dancing on the floor, and I didn't like getting stuck there going, is this song over or not? So I would find songs that had a distinct end, and then I'd start the next one. And some did. And when there was a fade out and a fade in, I would make that in a dramatic way so that there's a new song. Oh, there's a new song. So I had a different way I was not into beat mixing.
Okay.
Although, having said that, I found, we're way off track here. One time I found people were dancing to all kinds of stuff. There was like medleys of this and that and so on. And I thought, I wonder if I could get people, just as a little interesting creative thing, because I'm a creative guy. I wonder if I could get people to dance to sound effects. So I found a basic beat from the flip side of a 45 record. That's how we had them back then. I created a tape loop. They didn't exist. So I had tape loop round and round. And then I had people dancing to sound effects, and they were all kind of looking at me funny. It actually worked. You know what? You get people with a little bit of alcohol, a big gang, a good sound system, they will dance to just about anything. I proved that.
But that's I know it sounds like you said it's a little bit off track, but that's what you also you took that creative mind, right? You were doing this in DJing, right? And saying, hey, I wonder if I could get people to move to sounds. But now you say, I wonder if I monitor people's action and we can get to what makes the money. 20% of the movement makes the money. The other 80%, follow-ups and all of those other things, that helps collaborate to making the money, but that's not the money-making actions. The money-making actions, you've been able to dial down as 20%, but the rest is just the dance to noise.
Yeah, we're back on track after that little digression. So in fact, those are the things you're passionate about. I love doing this thing and servicing clients as an entrepreneur or selling these products. The reality is you are going to need to do some of those other things. Accounting, right? Banking, creating sales, and so on. And so the idea there is delegate those to others who can do those things better than you. Some you might be able to do, like maybe you're a really good accountant, but that's not the core of your business. It's unless you're an accountant selling those services. But focus on what you are really good at and delegate the rest to somebody else, or create systems, or use technology, or AI, or whatever. Now, back to AI, I've used it a couple of times. I did an online, research, and there were a number of questions that people answered. So I had AI evaluate those answers and come up with the themes for me. So that was useful. I'm cautious though. I get letters that I can tell they're written by AI. And so use it as a tool, but it's not your main business.
That's your main business.
So there you go.
Well, there you have it, everybody. I told you we have these great conversations that put you at the feet of the masters. Not only put you at their feet, but we want to evolve your life. What books have influenced you, fiction, nonfiction, over the course of your time? You are and have been well-rounded in life. So what has caused you to say, I can move forward?
There's lots of time management books out there. They all have similar kinds of themes. So I wrote my own one. There it is behind me, A Complete Waste of Time. I'm using stories and combine those with some tips. And there's another one, the Poetic Path to Getting More Done. It's all poems that are all about productivity. Listen, doesn't matter what book you read. There are a lot of good ones out there. The idea is to put those techniques into practice. Start creating daily habits that are different from what you're doing. So I would say all of the books have talked about doing a daily to-do list. Write down what you're going to do for the day. It's great because then you can check off the items at the end of the day and go, look what I did. That gives you a great sense of accomplishment. So, read all those time management, productivity, or sales books. They're all useful. Just start putting some of the ideas into action. You don't have to do everything, but just start some small habits that are a little bit different for you.
There you have it, everybody. Listen, all of the Mark's information is in the description. There's a line under Mark's name. There's going to be like, in this episode, yada, 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 yada. And then I'm going to introduce Mark. And I have that whole thing lined out. And if you click that line, it's going to take you to a landing page. In the landing page, you're going to see Mark, because right now you're listening to Mark. And then you're going to go to his website. You're going to go to his social media, follow him, engage, ask the questions, let him know that you heard him from our show so that he can know that that this was a great thing for him to be here. And those things matter if this is something that you need to build on. And if you are in business, these are some crucial elements to building your business and taking it to another level, moving from a small business owner into an entrepreneur. That's what we were talking about today. So we don't ask you for Venmos, Cash Apps, or any of those things, but we do ask that you hit like, subscribe, and share. Those likes, those subscriptions, those shares help us get in the algorithms so that other people can hear this conversation. If you're listening on a platform where you can leave a review, those reviews go a long way. Finally, don't walk with your head down. Don't walk procrastinating, not knowing how you spend most of your day. Don't walk reading books, not applying the information. Together, Mark now is a part of the Walk in Victory family. We walk in victory. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.